Welcome. I'm Geoff Moore, Chief Information Officer for the Valmark Financial Group. And today we're doing the Valmark Back Office Heroes video podcast series. And with me is Tyler Denholm. So Tyler, introduce yourself, give us a fun fact, tell us a little bit about what you do at Valmark.
Yeah, thanks, Geoff. So Tyler Denholm, Vice President of Investment Management and Research. I work directly with Michael McCleary, our Chief Investment Officer. Been at Valmark now a little over 15 years, so it's been my only professional job outside of college. So this has been my whole professional experience. The day-to-day things I do at Valmark, I work with a lot of our member offices on the advisory side. So basically any question that is not paperwork related when it comes to advisory business is something that I do, assisting the member offices. And then I also have the portfolio management duties of helping Michael with the research on the portfolios and coming up with trade ideas, implementation of those trade ideas, those types of things. Fun fact about me, many people do not know, is that when I was working on getting my internship here, I put in my application, I was going through the interview process, made it through a couple of rounds of phone interviews, and then it was the in-person series. And as part of the in-person series, they took you to lunch, and the person who was taking me to lunch that day was Michael McCleary, and he was joined by Craig Welch. And Michael is now, I'm his direct report, but he's our Chief Investment Officer, as I mentioned earlier. And Michael took me to Wasabi Hibachi kind of styled restaurant up on the hill here in Fairlawn. It's the first time I'd been to a place to use chopsticks, probably since third grade when we were learning about different cultures in school. Yeah. And so I was really nervous, made it through the lunch. And then a couple of years later, Michael told me that he had recommended they do not hire me for the internship process. So kind of a weird roundabout way. Many years later, I've been working with Michael as a direct report for a little over a decade now.
Oh, so almost his biggest career mistake, right? Almost his biggest
almost, that's
almost
right.
His biggest career mistake.
Exactly right.
Awesome. I love that story. That's so funny. So I think, what's interesting about you, Tyler, you actually have some special designations that a lot of people may not understand. So I know the first one you have is the CFA charter. Mm-hmm. Could you maybe explain a little bit about what a CFA is and what that?
Yeah, sure. So the CFA charter program is a multi-year program. You have to pass 3 different levels. Passage rate is somewhere between 35 and 50%, depending on the level each year.
For each level.
For each level.
So it gets kind of fewer and fewer people pass each year, essentially. It's like a giant filter.
Yeah, it's kind of almost like an hourglass, because I feel, level 1 is kind of a weed out, level 2 is the hardest, and then level 3, I think what they, if I had to guess, the general belief is once you've made it to level 3, they realize your stuff. Now it's about how do you implement it, and it tends to be not as detail focused. It's a little bit more broad, a little bit more qualitative than quantitative, and so it's a little bit, I would say, easier than the other 2 exams. But it's something that when I was reviewing different options my first year here at Valmark, I was looking at law school. I'd taken the LSAT. I was looking at MBA programs. And then it just kind of, I'm a very analytical person. So when I was looking at the cost of going to law school at that time, the one I was looking at was going to be around $70,000 a year with living expenses. You can't work. So I'm like, I can't take $200,000 of debt, forego 3 years of salary, just to try and get into something like investment banking or some other, finance related industry. And so I was looking through it. At the time, Otto Bossard had he was working here. He was a CFA charter holder. And I had some conversations with him, and we kind of really went down the path of what are you looking to do? What do you want out of your career? And for me, it was portfolio management. I really wanted to run portfolios, do asset management on an institutional level. And that's when the suggestion and the idea came to do the CFA charter. Valmark would cover the cost of the exam. So I went from one option that was $200,000 of debt, no work, to another option that Valmark covered the entire cost of. I just had to essentially put my nose to the grindstone and study and make the way through those levels.
Yeah, and I think what's interesting about you is I think a lot of people, once they would pass all 3 levels of the CFA, which is a multi-year commitment, a lot of work, they would say, I'm done. But you didn't stop there.
No, I wanted to, but I didn't.
So tell us about this. So you kind of went above and beyond. Like, what was the additional?
Yeah, so the other designation I have is CMT, is the Chartered Market Technician. It was something that Ryan Gilmer at the time worked at Valmark. He and I actually went through I went to college with him We went through the CFA program together. And so I had known him for a long time before he started working at Valmark. I had recruited him to join our PM team. And while we were both working here, he was really big on technical analysis, which is, for people who aren't familiar, it's charting, looking at stock charts and looking at price action to determine what's the most likely next move in the price action. What are some of the trends that you're seeing in the data? And it's kind of funny because we started talking about this idea, and for some people don't believe in technical analysis. They don't think it really is applicable.
It's like mystical. Whatever.
Yeah, well, It's funny you say that because Michael, when we brought him the idea, hey, we really want to go through the CMT program, and again, it's kind of a 3-level program, and he's like, CMT? He goes, well, you might as well get your master's in Halloween or something. Fortunately, he kind of came past that conclusion, and we worked through it. It was kind of fun because I got through, I think, level 1, maybe level 2, and then I had my first daughter. My wife and I had our first daughter, and so took a little bit of a break, and then went back to level 3. But after having that first kid and kind of going through the tests, I'm like, I'm good on test taking here for a little while. So once I got through the CMT program, I haven't looked at anything else, but there's always in the back of mind other designations that I've looked at. So,
curious. Like what would be one you would be thinking about?
There's like the FRM, Financial Risk Management designation. There's a couple of other ones that are just a little bit more nuanced, like the CAIA, Alternative Investment Analyst ones. So there's some other ones that I've kind of looked into to see if they're going to be something that I might want to dive into when the kids are a little bit older, a little bit more self-sufficient, and I have a little bit more free time.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, I have a ton of respect for all the effort you've put into all your additional training to, better yourself, better Valmark, better our portfolios. And if the number of screens connected to your Bloomberg is any indication of that, I would say you are well along your way. So
I appreciate that. Thank you.
So tell me, so you've got all this technical knowledge. You mentioned that you work with Office. Do you have a specific story about maybe, how you've been able to use some of your technical knowledge that you've acquired over the last several years to really help offices and their clients with their portfolios?
Yeah, there's one in particular that sticks out. So we talk about, one of Valmark's key qualities or things that we live by is building mutually beneficial, lasting relationships, right?
Yeah.
And so when I was thinking through of a situation that would be applicable, one stood out in that one of our largest offices at the time, it was one of their largest clients.
Okay.
One of the things that we do is we help create individual municipal bond ladders, and as part of that, we like to buy higher quality, higher rated debt issuings. And this client in particular was it was relayed to us that they were very particular about wanting high quality bonds. They didn't want to get into anything like single A rated or anything along those lines. And I said, okay, that's not a problem. Like, we can do that. And at the time, we worked with a bond buyer, like an individual who went into the dealer market and sourced offerings for us and then brought us the offerings. Now we just do that direct, so it's a little bit different setup. But at the time, it was a relationship that Michael had spent time building, and then I kind of took it over.
Yeah.
We had bought a bond for this client, and it was backed by revenue generated from Navy Pier in Chicago. So that whole like expo type center was backed by the revenue generated from that. It was AAA rated. It was a shorter term bond. So I'm like, okay, this is a good offering. We'll go ahead and take this offering. Come to find out, the very next day, so overnight, I think it was S&P or Moody's, downgraded the bond from AAA to BBB. So almost junk status. Overnight. Because the money that was owed to bondholders was sitting in trust, but that trust was locked up by the state of Illinois not being able to pass a budget. So because they couldn't pass a budget, even though the money was sitting there ready to go out to bondholders, it couldn't be issued to them.
Okay.
And so I guess, when you look at it, it was basically a technical default, even though the money was there to be paid. Until Illinois passed a budget, they couldn't pay the bondholders. And so, we got on the phone the next day with, our bond buyer, and what do we do? This was something that had never happened before in terms of, a multi-tier downgrade overnight without warning. And so what ended up happening, we talk about mutually beneficial, long-lasting relationships. She ended up buying the bond back from us at the price that the client initially paid.
That's incredible.
So even though there's a significant drop in price because of that rating cut, she took it back to help us because of the relationships that we had built. So
I love that story, because I think initially when we talk about relationships, we think about maybe, relationships with our advisors or relationships with employees. But here at Valmark, it's also important to have relationships with our vendors. And when you do that, you can tell stories like you just told.
Yeah, and hopefully the relationships with the vendors help the relationships with the clients.
Okay, you've shared a lot with us. One final question. You've been here a long time.
Yeah.
We've talked when we talk about, kind of industry being, people working just a couple of years sometimes. Why are you still here, and what has kept you at Valmark for so long?
Yeah, so that conversation comes up quite a bit with my friends and I when we're just out, and you see them change jobs and that. I can't imagine working at any other firm than Valmark, just because of the people that I get to work with on a day-to-day basis. So the group that we have, the employees that we have are phenomenal people. Everybody's, you walk through the hallways, people are smiling, laughing, having a good time. That's a big component of why I'm still at Valmark, because there's a lot of different financial firms, but it's the quality of the people, the quality of the individual that is here at Valmark that has really kept me here. I think of friendships that I've built. Chris Finnefrock was a groomsman in my wedding. I did not know him before Valmark. Caleb Nitz, funny story about Caleb Nitz. We had gone to an internship dinner for University of Akron students. Valmark hosted a dinner to try and get interns. And Caleb, I didn't know Caleb. I never had a class with him, didn't know him at all. At the time, Caleb kind of had like a little curly kind of fro hairdo going on. And it was the dead of winter. They had put the wrong address on the invitation. And so I parked way somewhere else in Akron, and it was freezing. So I got done, and Caleb offered to give me a ride. And I'm like, okay, I don't really know this person, but I'll get in the car with you, no problem. And as soon as we get in the car, he starts, talking to me about like, hey, I got this Bible study, would you be interested in attending and all this stuff? I'm like, who is this guy that doesn't know me, invites me to a Bible study, gets in his car and all that. And then Caleb and I joined Valmark at the same time, and he's been one of my, along with Chris Finnefrock, probably one of my best relationships here. Chris has been here 14 years. Caleb's been here 15. So it's the quality of the people, the quality of the individuals that I get work with on a day-to-day basis.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
This has been the Valmark Back Office Heroes podcast series with Tyler Denholm. Stay safe.